Now, I found a graph which allegedly shows how people in Europe care about Donald Trump. I don't know how accurate it is, but at least when you're looking at Romania, based on my interactions with people, I can say it's pretty much true. 62% is about right. I'll explain why that is. But before we go into that, I noticed a lot of Americans in the comment section saying that, well, who cares, right? Like, who cares how Europeans think? And I find it fascinating, the lack of political savvy, let's put it like this. Because on one hand, you got the Democrats that absolutely care what Europeans think about America, and I'll explain why. And, they're invested in making sure that television networks and newspapers from Europe have the quote unquote accurate information. And on the other hand, you have like people from the MAGA movement that are like, well, who cares? We're America, right? Like, we're America, no one cares. Why do the Democrats care though? Well, they understand the times we live in. We live in the times of the internet. Shaping public opinion can be done through polling. It can be done through commercials, like you actually have a politician having a political ad. And it can also be done through public discourse. Like if you're an American, and let's say you're on the fence, you haven't decided yet, and you go on social media and almost everyone is against Trump, you probably don't really know, oh, this guy is Australian, oh, this guy is Canadian. Like, you just see a lot of people against Trump. And that can shape public opinion. It can demoralize you if you're a Trump supporter. You see that everyone is against him. It can actually make you vote for someone else if you're on the side. That's why they do it. And it also will get people from Europe to create memes, to try and make arguments against Trump, right? Like, this is the reality we live in. It's an interconnected world. And you can't just say, well, I'm in America, so nothing else affects me. Because if you think like that, the opposition definitely doesn't think like that. And this is what happens if Trump manages to win. Like we already saw when he went into the UK. He had the Trump balloon blimp, and he had like an entire rally. People protested against him, right? And then you have like some authoritarian from the Middle East. I think he was like part of the Saudi family or Qatar. Visits London. No protest. No chance because he was violating human rights. None of those, right? And again, this is due to the mainstream media. This is due to the push that you're seeing. And it's also going to the point where people from within the political parties in Europe, like in the UK, they may actually get invested in wanting for the Democrats to win. It's kind of usual that, parties that support international systems, they would also want other parties that support the same international system. So in this case, like Labour from the UK definitely would like the Democrats in the United States to win. So, why exactly is this a thing? Like, why are almost all polls skewed against Trump? Well, one of the things that the people here get their information from is from the television, right? Like, they're still getting it from the mainstream media, from the authoritative sources. And many of them are almost exclusively pro-Kamala. And they are selectively cherry-picking information. Like, for instance, yesterday I was watching television with my wife, and the Romanian news was on, and they were talking about how Kamala had a very spiritual conversation. Like she had a speech, it was religious in nature. And I was thinking, like, if I don't know who she is, and if I don't know anything about the Democrats, which most Europeans don't, you would genuinely think that she's a pious person, that she is a religious individual, which for a country like Romania that's very religious, it makes you feel sympathetic towards her. They don't show, like, the topics that she has on abortions. They don't show you the topics that she has when someone shouts, Jesus is king, and gets escorted out from the rally. They don't show that. So, like, Romanians have no idea about it unless they're on social media. Which is why you get this interesting statistic here that 62% are for Kamala while 38% is for Trump. It's still a big percentage compared to the rest of the Europe, because a lot of Romanians do go on social media. And they do actually get interested in what's happening in the United States. Because there's also this question, right? Like the Americans are having, like, why do we care about what the rest of the world think? While in Europe, it's like, well, why do you care what happens in America? And the reason, as you can see, Eastern Europe cares about what happens in America is because we're very close to Russia. So, like, whatever happens in America does influence us. And it's very important that we do care about what's happening there. Because sometimes the elections in the US can influence our country more than the elections over here. So it is very important. Now, one of the beating stick they're using in order to fearmonger against Trump is that Trump wants to pull out of NATO. Like, this is the war drum that they keep going with. The reality is that Trump wants European countries to pay their fair share. Like, you have to pay around 2% of the GDP for public defense, and many countries weren't, which means that NATO was weak. And Trump also wanted Germany to stop that shit with the gas pipeline with Russia. Like, if Trump was pro-Russia, he would have encouraged Germany to start 5 more pipelines and then encouraged other countries to become energy dependent from Russia, right? Like, I'm looking at the actions, not at the speeches. So, no, I don't think that he actually wants to pull out of NATO. I don't even know if it's possible, because it's not just him that would have to make the decision. It's also the Republican Party. Like, he would need support from his Republicans. I don't think they would even give him that. Especially not when you have issues with China. Like, no, I don't think that he's going to pull out of NATO. It's ridiculous. But this is what the televisions keep mentioning. And this is why, like, a lot of Europeans are like that. Also, when it comes to Eastern Europe, social issues don't really matter. We care more about the economy. So if you start talking about the LGBTs, if you start talking about abortions, if you start talking about this shit, no one cares. It's like, okay, how is this going to help me put food on the table? Like, why exactly do I care about issues that are happening in the United States? Meanwhile, if you talk about stuff like NATO, if you talk about stuff like national security, then people actually do care. So, as you can see, the closer you go to Eastern Europe and you go to ex-Soviet states, they do not appreciate the online censorship. They do not appreciate certain trends that are happening worldwide. And also, they do not like the conflict with Russia and Ukraine. They would prefer if the conflict finds a resolution as soon as possible and it doesn't expand further in Eastern Europe. I mean, it's unlikely, but still, people are concerned because you have, like, a conflict with a major power across the border. And during the last Trump administration, there was no conflict in Eastern Europe. Like, Putin invaded Crimea during the Obama's administration, and while Trump was in office, there was no conflict. Not just in Eastern Europe, but he managed to defeat ISIS across the world. It was more peaceful. So what a lot of people are hoping is that there's going to be a preferable outcome in the Ukrainian conflict, and there's going to be a resolution at some point, right? Like, people do not want to have a forever war across their borders. So this is what I get from talking with other Romanians. Like, obviously not everyone is like this, because you do not to see that 62% are for Kamala. So 62% disagree with my take. But it also depends how accurate these polls are, because many times it's also about who you ask. Like, if you're not asking people from the rural area and you're asking people only from progressive, multicultural cities, you're going to get a completely different answer, even if the poll is done correctly, right? And they did question 1,000 people, or the number they have, and the methodology was done properly. But if you only question from a specific place, then you're going to get a different answer. So anyway, let me know what you think, and I'll see you guys in the comment section. Take care.